Okie dokie. Have you ever come across a figure who can both be a hero and a villain at the same time? Well, that's what we're looking at today with Samael. And in Gnostic mythology, Samael embodies a fascinating duality. Samael is also known as the Venom of God or the Poison of God. In some Gnostic myths, he's known as the Demiurge. Samael is considered an angel, and this means he once existed in the celestial realms as part of the divine order, where angels are generally seen as good and pure. They're messengers and servants of God, but Samael is not just an angel. Throughout various cultures, Samael is both an angel and a demon. I had originally recorded an entire show regarding Samael through Gnostic mythology, and it got dumb. It got super confusing because it started to relate Samael as the Demiurge who was blind and all this other stuff, blind in the figurative sense, not the literal sense, being that he didn't know that there was anything above the Pleroma, or I'm sorry, not the Pleroma, above him spiritually, that he was the only God and that he was the only one that existed and that everything else was just humans and he had to keep them from gaining spiritual knowledge and moving beyond. And it was so much full of garbage and contrast that it didn't make any sense. Like, how could you have a God that's blind, but keep people from seeking spiritual enlightenment and moving beyond into the next realm in the seven heavens or through the Pleroma and stuff like that, and not know that there are other angels that are out there that exist? He's also responsible for Sophia's fall. So, how did he know that Sophia existed? And it really annoyed me. So here's another retelling of the story, but it's much better. Today we're going to learn about the mythology of Samael through various myths and cultures and religions. So Samael is a figure that pops up in various religious texts and traditions. The name is often translated as Venom of God or Poison of God, but what does it mean? In some texts, Samael is depicted as an angel. He's often considered to be a fallen angel, associated with bringing harm or acting as an accuser. In other traditions, Samael is seen as a necessary force within the grand scheme of things. It's kind of like the idea that you can't have dark without the lightness. So Samael prominently features in Jewish, Gnostic, and some early Christian writings. In Jewish mysticism, particularly the Kabbalah, Samael is depicted as an archangel or a divine prosecutor. He shows up in the mystical book called the Zohar. He plays the role of an accuser, kind of like a divine prosecutor who challenges the righteousness of humans. His portrayal in these texts is quite layered, suggesting both a heavenly and a demonic side. In Gnosticism, Samael's character is a bit different. He's quite often linked with the Demiurge, the being who created the physical world. And some of these Gnostic texts even identify Samael as Yaldabaoth, who is considered ignorant or blind to the higher realms of divinity, which paints a somewhat darker picture of him compared to his role in Jewish mysticism. In early Christian texts, Samael is sometimes linked with Satan or Lucifer, blending his characteristics with those well-known figures. However, these mentions are varied and less consistent. Samael appears in several key religious texts, giving him different roles and personalities, and whether as a divine prosecutor or creator or a malevolent figure, Samael's appearances are rich with complexity and carry a multitude of interpretations depending on the context or the tradition. So why is Samael such a compelling figure, at least in mythology? Well, it's his complex role in different myths surrounding him. Samael is portrayed as a sinister character, often associated with darkness and evil, and in some myths, Samael is depicted as an archangel who possesses a dual nature. This duality makes him a force of destruction and a vehicle for divine punishment. Samael doesn't just bring chaos, he acts under divine command, executing the will of a higher power. This ambiguity creates a character rich with contradictions and questions about the nature of good and evil. One of the oldest texts mentioning Samael is the writings of early Jewish mysticism. He appears in works like the Zohar, which is a foundational text of Kabbalah, where he is often referred to as the angel of death. Unlike other angels, Samael is not simply a messenger, he is an executor of divine judgment, meting out punishment to those who stray from the righteous path. There's a well-known myth involving Samael and his connection with the fall of Adam and Eve. In some versions, Samael is seen as the serpent that tempts Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, which leads to humanity's exile from the Garden of Eden. This story adds another layer to Samael's character, in which he's considered a disruptor who plays a crucial role in human history and the narrative of sin. Samael is also linked to the concept of free will and its consequences. His actions force individuals to confront their choices and the repercussions that follow. This offers a stark reminder that the line between right and wrong is often blurred, and every action has its own set of outcomes. Samael's role isn't limited to Judeo-Christian traditions. In Gnostic texts, he is portrayed as a false god, a demon who leads people away from the true godly light. This contrast shows how cultures and beliefs shape interpretations of mythological figures. So understanding the myth of Samael requires us to look at the symbols associated with him. He is often represented by serpents, darkness, and even poisonous elements. These symbols enhance our perception of him as both a destroyer and a divine agent. The snake in the Garden of Eden and his association with venom reflect his ability to corrupt and harm, yet also purify through punishment. Samael's depictions across various texts and traditions contribute to his complex mythology. Whether as an angel of death in Jewish lore or a misleading god in Gnostic beliefs, Samael holds a unique position that continues to fascinate and terrify. His stories challenge us to think about duality, morality, and the eternal struggle between light and dark. Samael's role in mythology highlights a range of interpretations and symbols. Whether seen as a punisher or a deceiver, his character forces us to look deeper into the nature of good, evil, and divine justice, which makes him an endlessly intriguing subject worth exploring further. Another key myth places Samael in the role of the angel of death, and in Jewish tradition, Samael is often viewed as a harsh angel responsible for the death of humans. There's a story that tells of how Samael was assigned the task of taking Moses' soul. Samael encounters resistance. Moses refuses to die and recites divine names to protect himself. This struggle symbolizes the deep spiritual conflict between humanity's desire to live and the inevitability of death. As the angel of death, Samael upholds the natural order no matter how it affects individual lives. In the Talmud, Samael is also associated with the destruction of sinners and the execution of God's will through punitive measures. He's not evil, he just delivers divine justice. And this aspect of Samael's encounter points to his complex nature. He serves a necessary but fearsome role. Kabbalah texts present Samael as a figure who interacts with Lilith. We know that she may or may not have been Adam's first wife. She may or may not be a demon. The myth is just everywhere and nowhere at once. Samael and Lilith together represent chaotic and rebellious forces in the universe, opposing the benign and orderly aspects. These myths present Samael as both a tempter and an enforcer, pivotal in stories that highlight moral and existential dilemmas. He is neither purely evil nor purely good. Instead, Samael embodies the duality of creation, reinforcing the complexity of the cosmos. So when you hear the name Samael, you might think of him as a bringer of chaos, change, and ultimately balance. A figure whose purpose reminds humans of their limitations and the greater complexities at work in the universe. In many ancient texts, symbols associated with Samael carry deeper meanings. One of the most common symbols linked to him is the serpent. The serpent often represents duality. It signifies wisdom and knowledge. It also symbolizes deceit and danger. This dual nature reflects Samael's complex character. Another important symbol is the sword. Samael is often depicted wielding a sword of flame. This symbolizes his role as a divine enforcer. It also signifies destructive power. The sword can cut through illusions, revealing harsh truths. This aligns with his title as the Venom of God, indicating a force that purges and punishes. Samael's connection to the planet Mars is another interesting symbol. Mars is often linked to war and conflict. This association emphasizes Samael's role in divine retribution. Mars is also a symbol of strength and assertiveness. Samael's identification with Mars underscores his unyielding and relentless nature. The color red is another symbol tied to Samael. Red invokes images of blood and fire. It stands for both life and destruction. This color connection highlights the balance of creation and destruction in Samael's nature. He embodies the potential for both extremes. In some traditions, Samael is associated with the concept of balance. This idea is symbolized by scales. The scales represent judgment and fairness. Samael, despite his fearsome aspects, is seen as an enforcer of divine justice. The scales remind us of the need to weigh actions and consequences. Interestingly, the owl is also another symbol connected to Samael. And in mythology, owls often represent wisdom. They can see through the darkness, and this adds another layer to Samael's character. Beyond his punishing role, he is also a figure of profound insight. The owl symbolizes his ability to perceive hidden truths. There's also the symbol of the poison chalice. This represents the idea of trials and tribulations. Samael challenges individuals to face their darker side. This chalice signifies the bitter lessons needed for growth and understanding. Each symbol offers insight into Samael's multifaceted role, from serpents and swords to scales and owls. These images help us comprehend its complexity. Samael's symbols are not just about danger, but also wisdom, balance, and justice. They remind us that even in myths, there's often a deeper meaning. Understanding these symbols encourages us to think more about the duality in life, and Samael embodies both the harshness of justice and the necessity of growth through challenges. While these symbols might appear stark, they all circle back to themes of balance and understanding. In Islam, Samael isn't as prominently featured. However, there are parallels found in the figure of Azrael, the angel of death who is responsible for taking souls at the end of life. Azrael, like Samael, shows up in various texts, fulfilling a task that is both feared and respected. The angel of death serves a critical function without the sinister implications sometimes found in Christian narratives. In modern occultism, Samael is sometimes invoked in rituals and magic. People who practice magic may see him as a complex figure who embodies both creation and destruction. He might be called upon for protection or for more nefarious purposes, depending on the practitioner's intent. Modern interpretations can vary widely, often influenced by the diverse literary and theological backgrounds from which they draw. So what do these differing views tell us? Well, Samael is a multifaceted figure who can serve as an angel of death, a tempter, or blind god, or an occult symbol. His various roles underscore the complexity of interpreting ancient figures. Depending on the tradition, Samael can be a force of order, chaos, wisdom, or ignorance. And this makes him one of the more intriguing characters in myth and religion. And just when I thought that I had a handle on creating some decent scripts, today was a bit challenging. The original script was absolute garbage, repetitive, and in general, it sucked. But mostly it was repetitive. And, well, I do read the comments, so I'm trying to make better videos. I decided to make this one, which was an overview of the mythology of Samael. And yeah, some of it's repetitive, instead of focusing on the Gnostic side of him. But I wanted to add in the Gnosticism part because I thought it would be important. This script didn't give us much in the way of the Gnostic mythology of Samael, other than a couple of blurbs. In Gnostic cosmology, Samael and Yaldabaoth are often closely associated. Sometimes it's even conflated, leading to confusion about their roles as the Demiurge. Here's a breakdown of why both figures are sometimes considered the Demiurge. And this is why I decided to go a different route with the video, because the Samael Demiurge Yaldabaoth thing was just way too confusing, and it didn't make sense. Like, if I had let out that video, everybody would have been angry because it's already been established. But Gnosticism is weird. The origin of Yaldabaoth is identified as the primary Demiurge in Gnostic texts. He's the son of Sophia. We all know who Sophia is. Sophia created him out of curiosity and without consent of her counterpart. Now, there's the eons, and the eons have a counterpart that balances. And we've already established that Sophia did not have a counterpart. She had to create a counterpart, but she created the Demiurge, Yaldabaoth. And Yaldabaoth is ignorant of the higher realms and believes himself to be the only god. So he creates the material world out of ignorance. We know that. He's flawed. He's arrogant. And his creation of the material world is depicted as a mistake. He is seen as the ruler of the material world and is viewed negatively in Gnostic thought. Samael means blind god or Venom of God, depending on who you ask at any point in time, I guess. And this reflects his ignorance and destructive nature. The name emphasizes the concept of blindness or ignorance, which is a key characteristic of the Demiurge as well. In some Gnostic texts, Samael is another name for Yaldabaoth. They are seen as different aspects of the same being. Both figures represent the concept of a lesser god who, in ignorance, creates and rules over the material world. Gnosticism is not a monolithic belief system. Different sects and texts offer various interpretations of these figures, and in some, Yaldabaoth and Samael are distinct beings with overlapping roles. In others, they are the same entity under different names. I hope that clears things up. Anyways, that's all I got. Hey, we have a Patreon. If you want extra shows like the intermezzo or the artwork from all of our videos, check it out. Patreon.com/microphone therapy. All right, that's all I've got for today. If you like it, give us a like and subscribe. If you don't like it, that's okay too. Other than that, have a great day.